My wife was sleeping my boss, so I got even by doing the same with her mother. Hey Redditors, buckle up your seats as this is going to be a long post about how I found out my wife was cheating with my boss. My world came crashing down. I could not let it go, so I decided to have an affair with her mother just to make myself feel better. I am 24M and my wife Joyce, 23F, have been married for 2 years. We had been living together, so the switch from living in to getting married did not come with much challenge. However, we had different career paths, which led to a few ups and downs at times. We were college sweethearts and married right after getting out of college. When I look back, I think that was the dumbest thing I ever did. I should have listened to my friends about having a few heartbreaks before settling in for the one. How I wish I could turn back time and take that advice. Anyway, coming back to where I was. We married at 22. I know, too young and too naive. She was the one and only girlfriend I had all my life. She was popular in college and was already dating someone else when we met. We were paired to do a project together, and that's how our conversation started. Despite her popularity and existing relationship, we formed a deep connection as we worked on the project. As time went on, we realized that our bond was something special and decided to take a chance on each other. Her over-possessive boyfriend would always keep showing up every time we had to work together, which led to their breakup. I did gain a little confidence and asked her out one day. She agreed for just one date so as not to ruin our friendship. I took her out to the movies so that I could take advantage of the dark and hold her hand. Good times, I must say. She did not pull away when I did, and in that moment, I knew that she was the one. I tried everything in my power to charm her into falling in love with me. Eventually she did, and ultimately it led to us tying the knot at a very young age. Joyce had been living with her mother during college. Her mother, Evelyn, was a single mother. She was pregnant with Joyce when she was 15 and had been taking care of Joyce ever since. Joyce's father had fled away from taking any responsibility for the pregnancy, so it was just Evelyn and Joyce. Evelyn was a stay-at-home mom. I had no idea how she would come up with money to put Joyce through college without a decent job. It was not my place to judge or ask about it, so I never brought it up in my conversations with Joyce. They were very close to each other as they had been each other's support all through the years. I was not a big fan of Evelyn, and something about her always bothered me, though I could not point a finger on it. Maybe our initial encounter did not leave the right impression on me. Despite my reservations, I respected the strong bond between Joyce and Evelyn and tried to keep an open mind about their relationship. During our dating phase, I was to pick Joyce for a party. I went to her house and was seated by Evelyn in the living area. Joyce was in her room getting ready, and I was asked to wait for another 15 minutes till she showed up. Evelyn started talking to me about my likes, dislikes, etc. I thought it was just a protective mom trying to know the guy her daughter had been dating. As the conversation progressed, I could see Evelyn trying to lessen the distance between us. I was feeling nervous and extremely comfortable. It did not feel right. I started to wonder if Evelyn was trying to make moves at me. The more she tried to connect with me, the more I realized that maybe I had misread the situation entirely. Maybe it was a test that I needed to pass so that I get a green chit from Evelyn to date her daughter. Those 15 minutes were the longest 15 minutes of my life. When Joyce came down, I was relieved and instantly stood up to leave. Evelyn hugged Joyce and told her something in the ear, which I assumed were the results for my character and loyalty. I mentally kicked myself for thinking all kinds of absurd things about my girlfriend's mother in my head and took her leave with a sheepish grin. We both had about 6 months to graduate from college and started living together. It was easier this way as I was living closer to college. This way we could save up some money. We both decided that we would get married after college so that we could kickstart our life together as a couple without wasting years waiting for the right moment. Now, when I look back, I feel like I was either hypnotized or trapped by black magic to make that decision. After our graduation, we set up a date and had an intimate wedding with close friends and family. We made a few changes to our existing house to make it a little more functional for a married couple. It was difficult to land a job with a decent salary without any experience. It took a while, but I finally found a job that would be something that I wanted and was also paying a decent amount. Joyce was in the process of getting a job for herself, but she wanted to get hands-on experience as a hairdresser. She wanted to start her own hairdressing salon for which she needed investors. I started working for a construction company. My job was to go to various construction sites and supervise the safety and the progress of the projects. I had to determine if everything was running smoothly and if we would be able to deliver by the deadlines promised to the clients. It was a challenging and demanding job, but I enjoyed doing it. It was not like a boring desk job, which allowed me to work on my fitness routine due to all the walking at work. After 1 year, I was promoted for my hard work by my boss, Brian. He was demanding and always nagging about some or the other things which he felt could be improved. He was in his late 50s and was handed down the company to him by his father. I invited Brian for dinner to thank him for the promotion that I received. He did hesitate initially, but after me being persistent for a while, he agreed to have dinner at our place on Friday. On Friday, Brian showed up at the house alone and did not get his wife along. I did not want Joyce to feel left out and get bored during the entire dinner. Surprising, I saw a very different side of my boss that day. He was cracking jokes, accommodating, not being the usual and happy, complaining self that he is at work. He seemed like a really different person outside of work. He even arrived with a bottle of wine, which I wasn't expecting. We finished our dinner and made our way towards the backyard where we set up a drinks table. We finished the bottle of wine that he had brought, so I went inside to get something else to drink. When I came back, I noticed that my boss and Joyce were immersed in a conversation. Joyce was explaining about her hairdressing course and her plans of starting her own salon once she finds a decent investor. My boss looked genuinely interested in the conversation, so I thought it would be better not to disturb the flow of the conversation. I poured the drinks and sat back trying to be a part of this conversation. It looked as if I did not exist as they were so engrossed in their conversation. As I listened to Joyce talk passionately about her dreams, I couldn't help but admire her determination and ambition. It was inspiring to see my boss genuinely engaged, offering advice and encouragement. I realized that this conversation was an opportunity for Joyce to showcase her potential, and I silently hoped that she would find that investor in my boss. The conversation had shifted from my promotion to Joyce's salon as the night progressed. As my boss started to leave, he asked Joyce to make a presentation and meet him after a week in his office to discuss further. He asked to shortlist venues and the cost of equipment and also the employees she would need for the initial setup of the salon. Joyce eagerly agreed to the task and assured my boss that she would diligently prepare the presentation and gather all the necessary information. As we all exchanged goodbyes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for Joyce's new venture and the potential opportunities it could bring her way. We both were super excited about how this entire night went. We celebrated by having a few more drinks and made passionate love to new beginnings. Joyce was busy in the next few weeks working on her presentation. I resumed my work at my new position. We had gotten busy with our hectic work schedules. Joyce had presented her proposal to Brian, and he agreed to invest in Joyce's hairdressing salon. The salon opened up at a prime location, and Joyce was busy with managing everything by herself till she could get a capable manager to handle things. On the other hand, I kept getting a lot of projects for different cities which needed me to stay away from home more often than not. I could see that Joyce and Brian had become too close to each other. It did not look like a normal partnership between an investor and a business owner. I started to notice that my boss had been spending more of his time at Joyce's salon than at his main office. This was something that kept bothering me. I decided to ask Joyce if something was going on between them. Joyce dismissed it, stating that I was making a mole into a mountain. Brian was more interested in finding out when he would start receiving profits on his investment. He was trying to study the market and give her tips on how she could increase sales. It still did not sit well with me that Joyce was spending much of her time with Brian rather than giving importance to our relationship. As Joyce's business started booming, she got much busier than she previously was. This was causing a lot of friction between us, and I could see cracks beginning to develop in our relationship. We started having a lot of arguments about who is giving how much to the relationship. My boss had started sending me on a lot of business trips to other locations, which did not allow me to spend as much time with Joyce as I would have liked to. I could feel the emotional as well as physical distance growing between me and Joyce. I noticed that our conversations became shorter and less frequent, and it seemed like we were drifting apart. The lack of quality time together was taking a toll on our relationship, leaving me longing for the connection we once had. One day, as I was on one of my business trips, I called Joyce from my hotel room to check on her. I thought of making a video call just to surprise her and also to show her the room I was staying in. It had a wonderful sea view that I wanted to share with her. She rejected two of my calls, which were weird as I knew that her salon would be closed today and she would be at home. She did pick up on my third attempt but looked too distracted to talk to me. She kept glancing over her head towards something that she found much more interesting than the view I was trying to show her. It did irk me a little at her indifference towards my gesture. I noticed something strange in the background that did not belong to our bedroom. It looked like a men's boxer, and to the best of my knowledge, I had stopped wearing boxers since I was a teenager. I knew that it wasn't mine for sure, and I knew that Joyce did not own any boxers that I know of. I made a mental note of asking Joyce about the boxer once I got home from this business trip. The day I came back from my business trip, I noticed Brian's car park outside Joyce's salon. I made my way into the salon and asked the receptionist where I could find Joyce, though I knew the answer to it already. As I walked towards Joyce's cabin, I could hear the receptionist call her, letting her know that I was coming to her cabin. I found it quite weird that the receptionist was making this look like an appointment when I was actually her husband. I just let it go, thinking of it as protocol and that she was just doing her job. I knocked on the door and decided to show myself. It was my wife, and I did not need permission to get inside my wife's cabin. I noticed that Brian and Joyce were seated on the sofa with a file that they were going through. I greeted Brian and walked towards Joyce to hug her. When I was hugging her, I could see the file that they were looking at, which was upside down. That's a unique way of going through your business, is what I thought. I sat across from them on the sofa and was expecting Brian to take his leave and give us some privacy. Instead, he asked me to submit a report on my business trip at his desk by tomorrow morning. I was surprised by his demand, but nevertheless I agreed to it well and could not deny the fact that he is still my boss. I would have to take orders from him. I was waiting for Joyce to end the meeting with Brian so that we could talk about ourselves. After a few minutes, Joyce and Brian said their goodbyes by hugging each other. I was dumbfounded by their closeness within the last few months. I knew that they were business partners, but I was unaware of them being so friendly to hug each other. I was seeing a different side of both Joyce and Brian, which, to be very honest, was not something I was a fan of. I sarcastically passed a comment at Joyce that she was too friendly to hug anyone and anything. She looked puzzled and had a blank expression on her face. I decided to let it go for now, as I did not want to start a fight as soon as I got back. I asked her if she would like to leave with me right now so that we could spend some quality time together. She was overjoyed by my suggestion and decided to leave immediately. We left and went to have dinner at a fancy restaurant, as we had not been able to in the recent past. We spent a lot of time with each other after a really long time and caught up on what was going on with us during the last few days. I brought up the topic of her closeness with Brian. She said that he was actually a very nice person after getting to know him outside of work. He did have his own ideas that he wanted to share with her to help with growing the business. They had been working on this for a while now, and she was expecting for them to see positive results soon. All this talk was boring me to death because I could see that Joyce did not actually answer my question, but was just talking whatever came to her mouth. This made me have my own doubts about their relationship. I did not want to create a scene at a public place and took whatever answers she threw at me. The thought of figuring out what was going on never left my mind even for a second. I started noticing that I was given priority to handle a lot of projects at work, which were mostly in other cities, though there were people who had much more experience than me at handling them. I couldn't understand if Brian was doing this so that I could gain more experience or to keep me busy at work, so that I don't get to spend enough time with Joyce. I was still unsure about their relationship. It was something that I knew I had to figure out on my own. I knew that complaining to my manager about my work would have a negative impact on my professionalism. The only way I would be able to get out of this would be to make enough errors so that I would be let off a few projects that would give me some time to find answers to my questions. So that's what I did for the next few days. I messed up big time. So my managers complained to Brian that I was incapable of handling that many projects at the same time, as I did not have enough experience. He had no choice but to reduce the amount of projects I was assigned to. The plan was working, at least so far. The next day on my way to work, I decided to call my manager and let him know that I had a flat tire, so I would be coming into work a little late. I was proud of myself for lying without any hesitation. I was getting better at coming up with excuses to keep an eye on Joyce and Brian. I parked my car in the opposite lane of Joyce's salon, from where I could see the entrance very clearly. I bought a sandwich on my way and waited in my car for Joyce to show up for work. The salon was supposed to be closed today, but I had a feeling that she would definitely show up. As I waited, having my sandwich, I could not imagine how I would be able to get over this situation if there was actually something going on between Joyce and Brian. I waited for more than 30 minutes and was about to give up when I saw Joyce park her car in front of the salon. She unlocked the door and went inside. Now, all I had to do was wait for Brian to show up, which I was very positive about. I was still praying deep down that what I would be expecting does not happen. A little over 10 minutes passed when Brian started parking his car just behind Joyce's. He got out of the car and walked into the salon and locked it from inside. I waited for about 5 minutes and then decided to see with my own eyes what the hell was going on. I had a spare key to the salon, which I used to get inside. I had come prepared, just in case I had to use it. I knew where to find them, so I tiptoed towards Joyce's cabin. I could hear them laughing and talking animatedly. I slowly opened the door just a little bit so that I could take a peek into the room, and what I saw was something I was expecting but definitely not ready for. I saw Joyce sitting on the table with her legs spread wide and Brian standing in the gap between her legs. Somewhere inside my heart, I already knew what I was going to witness, but I was not aware of how badly it would hurt when I actually saw it. I decided that I needed evidence to prove that they were having an affair, so I took out my phone and started filming. It was painful to watch the love of my life being intimate with my boss, but I knew I had to do this. With a heavy heart, I hit the record button and made sure that I captured most of what I could before it got too much for me to watch. I filmed them kissing each other, undressing each other, and then Brian going down on his knees, and that's it. I couldn't take it anymore. I was hyperventilating as if I was about to die of a stroke, so I made my way out and started puking. It is never so easy to see someone you love and trust cheating on you with someone else and acting as normal as possible with you. I would have given an Oscar to Joyce for acting like the perfect wife when in reality all she was doing was sleeping with my boss. I could visualize our journey so far. I tried to do everything in my power to live up to Joyce's expectations as a boyfriend and also as a husband. I don't think I have done anything that would cause Joyce to cheat on me. I had always been good to her and tried to support her in every decision she ever made, even though I would not agree with most of her decisions. That is what love means, according to me. Being there for each other, however stupid the other person sounds. I knew that this was not something I deserved and definitely not something I should be okay with. I sat in my car and went to work as I did not have the courage to face either Joyce or Brian at the moment. I tried to divert my mind by focusing on the project I was currently working on, but it was getting very difficult to think straight. I went home feeling dejected and sad. Joyce had come home early today and wanted to cook dinner for the both of us. I tried to act normal as if nothing had happened and that I was still the loving and caring husband she always wanted. My heart had broken into 1,000 pieces, and I knew it would be very difficult for me to trust and love someone in the future. I really believed that Joyce was my soulmate, and we would be living happily together for the rest of our lives. That was a dream which had now shattered along with my hopes for a future together. There was this anger that was building up inside me, and I did not know how to let go of all this negativity that I was feeling, which kept growing every minute. It had been 3 days since I witnessed the infidelity of Joyce, and I still had no clue what I should do that could help me get this anger and frustration out of my system. Just as I was thinking about that, the doorbell rang, and I went to open it. I wondered who it could be so early in the morning on a Sunday. I opened the door and saw Evelyn standing and carrying 2 big bags of groceries. I motioned her to get in as I was in no mood to start a conversation with her. I came up with an excuse to save myself from engaging with her, and that's when my mind was hit with a lightning bolt of an idea. I knew exactly what I wanted to do to get my sweet revenge. I always lived by the mantra that you should always give back what you get in return, if possible the double, and it was time for me to live by that mantra. I excused myself from Evelyn and went to my room. I needed some quiet time for myself to come up with the plan. I could see that Joyce was still sleeping after a very long day at the salon yesterday. I know what kept her busy, obviously, and it was not work. Of course not. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that Evelyn had always wanted to get closer to me. This was the perfect opportunity where I could use it to my advantage. I laid out a foundation of my plan, or what I thought of achieving by doing this. One thing I knew was that I wanted Joyce to feel the same amount of pain I did when I saw her and Brian together. I wanted her to have the same amount of heartbreak I did when she sees me with someone else. In the evening, when Evelyn decided to leave, I requested her to spend a few days with us. Both Joyce and Evelyn were surprised at my suggestion, as both of them had an idea that I was uncomfortable around Evelyn. Evelyn tried to politely refuse my request, but I made sure I looked genuinely interested in asking her to stay with us for a few days. I guess it worked, and Evelyn agreed to spend a few nights with us. My plan was finally taking its course, and all I had to do was try to be as good to Evelyn as I could be, so that she thinks that the thirst is mutual at both ends. Joyce asked me what it was all about asking Evelyn to stay with us, and I just told her that since I knew that she and Evelyn have a really close bond, I did not want to make things uncomfortable between them because of me. I wanted to try to be open towards Evelyn and give her a chance to reduce the awkwardness between us. I got a raised eyebrow from Joyce, but she was happy that I was giving her mother a chance. She did not have time to deal with me, as she anyway had Brian to think about. She was busy having an affair and trying her best to hide it from me. It has been 2 days since Evelyn had started living with us, and I tried to be as close to her as possible. I would accidentally brush hands with her while making breakfast, or bump into her while coming out of my room, or sit too close to her on the couch while watching TV. I was trying everything I could to test the waters to check if Evelyn was getting my drift. I felt like I was fishing again, waiting for the fish to take the bait. My wife's mother, Evelyn, always made passes at me even when we were dating. I found it odd, but ignored it because I loved my wife and wanted to be loyal to her. I knew that Joyce trusted only 2 people in her life, and I did not want to break her heart by telling her about her mom's actions. All I had to do was ignore her advances, and things would not blow out of proportion. I decided to try my luck in seducing Evelyn, which was not quite difficult, to be very frank. I knew that Evelyn would jump at any opportunity she got if she would get even a hint of me being interested in her. She was never the kind of person to care about relationships. It would never occur to her that she was trying to seduce her daughter's husband. She had always looked at me with lustful ease and would be happy to know that I think the same about her. So I decided to take my chances with Evelyn and give her the bait. I knew that there was no going back after this. In the hindsight, Evelyn was a good catch. She was just 38 years old and still looked stunning. At least she was not my mother's age, which made me go ahead with the plan. I know that I was being mean to use Evelyn's longing for a partner to my advantage, but I had no other choice. This was the only way I could make Joyce realize what it felt like to betray the one you truly love. I tried to lure her using my body as well. I came home after a run and took off my shirt, walking towards the fridge to get some water. Evelyn was preparing breakfast, and I knew that she was stealing glances at my body. I walked towards her and whispered good morning in her ear while taking a coffee mug from the rack above her. As I watched Evelyn eagerly anticipate our encounters and shower me with affection, guilt gnawed at me. I couldn't help but question my decision to manipulate her emotions for my own agenda. However, desperate times called for desperate measures, and I was determined to teach Joyce a lesson she would never forget. It was time to take the final step of my plan. I sent an accidental message to Joyce asking her to meet me at home, as Joyce was at her salon and would not be coming back till later that night. I made sure that she read the message and then deleted it. I sent another message to Joyce acting all innocent and said that I will see her tonight after work. I called in sick at work and told Evelyn that I wanted her help with something that I needed to do. I knew that Joyce would check with Brian if I showed up for work to verify the message I sent her. I calculated the amount of time Joyce would take to reach home from her salon, and I had to make sure I am prepared before she comes. I had breakfast with Evelyn to make her know that I am interested. I told her that she looked sexy, even at her age, and to top it, I even mentioned that if it was not for Joyce, I would have definitely gone for her. This made her blush, and I could see the tension building up. I had to make sure that Evelyn did not take things into her own hands before it was time. I decided to leave her alone and prepare things in my room. I went and tracked Joyce's phone's location to see if she was on her way home. I pulled up the sheets and acted as if I sprained my back in the process. I called out to Evelyn for help. I made sure that she believed that I was badly injured and needed her help. She tried to make me sit on the bed, and this was my chance to make things steamy. I fell on the bed and made sure that she fell in such a way that she would not be able to resist what I do next. Our faces were so close to each other, and I could see that Evelyn was ready to take that chance. I let her kiss me as I did not want to be the first one to cheat. I know it was stupid of me to still think of not betraying my wife. Evelyn kissed me, and then I started to continue to take it further. It would take another 10 minutes for Joyce to reach home, and that should give me enough time to do all that I had planned. I made sure that Joyce was unaware of the growing sexual tension between Evelyn and I all these days. She had no idea who she would be catching with me once she got home. I could hear a car's brakes slam in our driveway. This was my cue to take it up a notch further. I started undressing Evelyn and making her moan with pleasure. I could hear the footsteps on the stairs and tried to distract Evelyn from it. Joyce caught me and Evelyn in a compromising position in our bed. That was the plan, actually, to get caught in our house and in our very own bed. I wonder how many times Brian and Joyce made love on the same bed when I was away for business. As Joyce stood there, a mix of shock and anger evident on her face, I couldn't help but feel a wave of victory wash over me. Joyce screamed as loud as she could, which made Evelyn and I come out of our trance. Evelyn started covering herself, and Joyce had a horrified look on her face. She started screaming how we could do something like this to her. We were the only people she had trust in, and that we both let her down. Evelyn was genuinely apologetic about it. She was about to say something when I cut her off. I told her that I felt the same way when I saw her and Brian making out in her office. I could see the color drain from her face when she realized I knew about the little affair she was trying to hide. She accused me, stating that I was making up stories to cover my own mistakes. I laughed so hard, as I could not believe her denying it till the end. I showed her the video that I filmed, which led to her finally admitting to it. She said that she did not mean to cheat on me, but had to, as he was investing in her business. I did not buy it, as their interactions did not seem forced at all. She was enjoying his company, going to expensive dinners in the guise of meetings, and taking expensive gifts from him. What did she even see in him? My boss was old, way too old to be a grandfather to our children. How could my wife even think of cheating on me with him? He was loaded, but still that does not mean you go around and sleep with anyone who is throwing money at you. I was shattered, to say the least. I know what I did does not justify my actions against my wife. I am not going to lie. It did feel good getting back to Joyce for what she did to me and our relationship. I agree when people say that even a lifetime is not enough to truly know a person. I guess it's true. I can't help but wonder if my financial stability was the reason why my wife broke up with her boyfriend and agreed to marry me. Was that the only reason, or did she ever truly love me? I know that I would not be getting answers to any of these questions in this lifetime. I have to live with the fact that my wife cheated on me with my boss, who showed her that he's got money. The only guilt I have right now is what I did to Evelyn. I know I used her to my advantage. I wish there was an easier way out to take my revenge. It was satisfying to see Joyce all alone, as she could not even confide in her mother after what she did to her. I wanted to quit my job, but then decided against it, as I was not the one at fault here. I don't know where to go from here. Joyce had left home that day and did not contact me so far. Evelyn was too ashamed, so she left immediately after the incident. I am writing this post just to distract myself from the sadness engulfing me. I hope I can get some advice from you guys on what I should do next. Thanks for listening. I find myself in a deeply distressing and confusing situation that I need to share. Recently, I discovered that my wife was cheating on me with a man, leaving my 5-year-old alone at school to fulfill her lust. I am overwhelmed with emotions and searching for some form of solace. Let me share the details of my shocking discovery and how I handled things going forward. I am writing this to lessen my burden of pain that I feel like I have been carrying for such a long time. Some context before we get into the details of how I discovered that my wife had been cheating on me and what I did after that. My name is Chris, and I am 43 years old. I have been married to Susan for 10 years. Susan is 36 but looks very young and attractive for her age. This was something that I was proud of, and never once did it cross my mind that it would someday bite me in the back. We have a beautiful daughter, Kylie, who just turned 5. Our marriage had always seemed strong, and I never had any reason to doubt Susan's loyalty. However, a few months ago, I discovered something that made a big dent in our relationship. It turned our lives upside down. After Kylie was born, my wife decided to dedicate her entire time in bringing her up. She was selfless to give up her career and prioritize bringing up our daughter. I had been very grateful to her for this decision because Kylie had always been a fussy kid and demanded a lot of attention. My wife's dedication and care for Kylie allowed me to focus on my career and provide for our family. I admired her patience and commitment as she tirelessly nurtured Kylie's growth and development. Despite the challenges, my wife never wavered in her commitment to providing the best for our daughter. We made sure that we take the best possible care of Kylie by enrolling her in quality educational programs and extracurricular activities. Additionally, my wife constantly sought out resources and support to ensure Kylie's well-being and happiness. Together, we created a loving and nurturing environment for our daughter to thrive in. Susan would always be there for Kylie, so I had little or less to do in upbringing Kylie, to be very honest. I trusted Susan blindly and just let her handle everything at home. One day I got a call from Kylie's school that they were unable to reach Susan and wanted me to come and pick her up. They had a fire emergency and had to leave all the kids early. I called Susan, but it went straight to voicemail. I called the landline, but there was no answer. This had never happened, as Susan had always been proactive with anything that concerned Kylie. I knew something was seriously wrong with Susan for her to be missing in action. I decided to go and pick Kylie by myself and then check on Susan. I asked my boss if I could leave as it was an emergency and hurried to Kylie's school. On the way, I saw Susan's car parked at the children's playground near Kylie's school. I was about to drive to her to see if she was okay when I saw someone get out of the car and kiss her a passionate goodbye and walk towards another car parked a few blocks away. I was shocked, to say the least. I was fuming with anger at Susan for not only cheating, but also not prioritizing our daughter for her thirst for sex. I decided to first pick up Kylie and then see what Susan was up to. I reached Kylie's school and saw her waiting all by herself, alone and scared. I hugged her and told her that I got her and would never leave her alone. As we walked back to the car, Kylie looked up at me with tear-filled eyes and asked why her mom wasn't there. I struggled to find the right words, trying to shield her from the painful truth. It was in that moment that I vowed to protect and support Kylie through this difficult time, no matter what. I had then decided that Susan would have to pay for not just cheating on me, but also for neglecting Kylie. Susan called me and said that she had a flat tire and would be late to pick up Kylie. I told her that I already picked her up and not to worry. I could not show what I was actually feeling in front of Kylie, so I acted normal. I was unable to get the image of a man kissing Susan out of my head. I asked her to come home as there was something that I needed to talk to her about. As I was waiting, I pictured the scenario in my head, and it did not look good for me. I had no proof or evidence that my wife was cheating. It was just my word against hers. She could just deny that it was not her, and then get cautious about not getting caught in the future. If I would challenge her in court, I might lose my daughter and also my house to my wife. I knew that I had to tread very carefully to make sure that Susan would be the one regretting all of this. Being reactive and aggressive would be of no help to me. I had to make a concise plan on getting my revenge, and also making sure that my baby girl stays with me no matter what. There was no way I was going to let Susan get custody of our child. I told Susan that I was just too scared and asked her to make sure Kylie was okay and left for work. On my way, I called a lawyer and discussed my options. He told me to gather as much evidence as possible, which would help me in court to prove my wife's infidelity, and in turn, lessen her chances of getting Kylie's custody. He told me to act like I always did, making sure that Susan does not get a hint of anything that I was doing. After getting the clarity of my position right now, I was more motivated and determined to make Susan pay. It was a really long night for me as I kept tossing and turning, thinking about how I could make Susan admit to having an affair. I got up very early in the morning the next day and started to come up with a plan in my head about how to act going forward. I got ready and kissed goodbye to both Susan and Kylie as I left work. I had to make sure that Susan had no clue that I was aware of her affair before I dropped the ball on her. I called in sick at work and decided to do a little shopping for everything that I would need. The first thing I bought was a GPS tracker to install in Susan's car. I also bought a few mini cameras that I could install in our house to know Susan's timing of leaving the house. This way I would know when she was meeting and whom. I got all the stuff I needed and went home waiting for Susan to leave the house. As soon as she left, I quickly got to work and installed one camera in the living room and one in the driveway. I was left with another one which I hesitantly installed in the bedroom as I did not know where else to install it. Satisfied with my work, I started to leave the house when I noticed Susan's tablet on the kitchen counter. I thought of a few passwords and finally got in. The tablet was logged into all her phone apps so I could read all the messages that she had been exchanging with her lover on Facebook. I took screenshots of all the messages and decided to leave as it was time for Susan to be back with Kylie. I had connected all the cameras to my phone to keep an eye on Susan. I went home and acted as if everything was normal and we were all a happy family. We had dinner and went to bed. I tried to act all cozy with Susan. She kissed me and said she loved me, which made me puke in my mouth. I controlled myself from not revealing her secret. We made love, though I didn't want to, as everything about Susan repulsed me. I knew that she would get tired after sex and have a sound sleep, which was the plan. After she slept, I connected her Facebook to my phone so that I was aware of her meetings and plans. I made sure I put everything in place without her doubting me sneaking around. I made sure to change my phone's password so that Susan does not get to know about my revenge. The next day, I started looking at how Susan got to know this guy, and since then this affair had been going on. I went to the first message and saw that this guy was a complete stranger who messaged Susan and complimented that she had the perfect figure of a MILF. Of course, he knew that she was married and had a kid. His message was not as surprising as Susan's reply. She sent him a devil emoji and replied how he would know unless he had actually done it. He replied that he could let her know if he could do it once they met. I did not want to read further as I was not ready for Susan's reply. I locked my phone and put it away before I got engulfed with anger and did something I would regret. I could not believe that it was so easy for Susan to flirt with a complete stranger, and the first response she had was that she wanted to sleep with the guy. Not even once letting the thought of Kylie and I cross her mind as she shamelessly flirted with a stranger. The cameras were working fine and everything else was going as per plan. I looked at Susan's Facebook that I had installed in my phone and could see that they were making a plan to meet. I was ready to call in sick at work and follow them to take some pictures as proof. But as Susan mentioned to meet at their favorite place, I had no clue where that could be, so I had no choice but to track Susan's GPS. I decided to wait for Susan to reach the location and then follow her there. There were just 2 hours left before it was time to pick Kylie up from her school, so I knew that they would not be going too far away from home or Kylie's school. I started wrapping up my work and kept checking the GPS tracker from time to time for any movement on Susan's car. It had already been 15 minutes and there was no movement, so I decided to check the cameras and see what Susan was up to. It was a good thing that I had installed a camera in our bedroom so that I would know if she was getting ready before leaving the house. She wore a low-cut blouse, which she said made her uncomfortable, but now she looked quite happy and comfortable wearing it. Now that I knew she was getting ready, I quickly decided to wrap up my work so that I could catch her red-handed and collect some evidence. I put my phone aside and started focusing on my work so that I could leave early. It was almost 10 minutes and there was still no movement on Susan's car. I switched to the cameras to see that probably she might be in the driveway leaving, but to my surprise, she was in our bedroom placing some objects that I had never seen before. It finally struck me that their favorite place was our house. Correction, my house that I had been paying for since we moved in. This was a new low from Susan that I was completely not expecting. I took a break from work and decided to sit in my car and keep an eye on Susan and her lover. I sat in my car and pulled up all the cameras and waited for something to happen. After 5 minutes, a car pulled up in our driveway. A man, probably in his late 20s, rang the doorbell. He was greeted by Susan wearing the same low-cut blouse paired with a skirt that could easily belong to Kylie. I didn't know what they were talking about, which was so funny. She went to the kitchen counter to pick up something, but he followed her around and started kissing her. She pushed him away and gave him something to eat. They then made their way to our room. She blindfolded him before entering the bedroom. She made him sit on the bed and undressed herself in front of him. She then removed his blindfold and started showing off her body. I could tell with his expression that he was pleased with what he saw. They started undressing and making out and then had full-blown sex. I was hurt, angry, and sad at the same time, but I forced myself to watch everything so that I can use all of this to my advantage later. After all this, I was pretty damn sure that there was no way in hell that I would be able to forgive Susan for what she did. I started maintaining a notebook in which I made a note of all their encounters from the beginning in detail, mentioning the date, place, and time where they had been meeting. It was quite shocking to see that all this had been going on behind my back for almost 10 months. I must admit, Susan was not only a very good liar, but also a very good actress. Not even once did I doubt her loyalty towards me. Even I got to know about her affair by accident. If I hadn't been called to Kylie's school that day, who knew how long this would have gone on without me having any clue about it. I was grateful to Kylie for saving my life and my future. She was definitely the best thing that had ever happened to me in my life. As I read through their messages, I could see the amount of respect Susan had towards me, or should I just say the lack of it. The way she made fun of me for not having a clue about them banging each other every time they had a chance was not just disrespectful but also demeaning. She had reduced me to a joke in front of a person I never met and created this image of me that I was incapable of controlling my own wife. This made me so angry, and I wanted to show her what a controlling husband looked like. I now had a new motivation, which was getting my revenge before going to court. I would first show her what kind of a husband I could be, and then drag her ass to court. I spoke to my lawyer and discussed the distribution of assets and property. My lawyer told me that anything that I have completely paid for should be under my name. Our house was under Susan's name, which I changed to Kylie. All the assets would be frozen right now and would go to Kylie once she turns 18. This was the only way I could make sure that Susan gets nothing from me. For the next few days, I kept an eye on Susan's activities and made notes to help my lawyer make a strong case against Susan for adultery. I was finally ready to reveal everything to Susan and confront her about it. I sent Kylie to stay with her grandmother for a few days, as I did not want the conflicts between me and Susan to affect her in any way. I took 2 days off from work to take my revenge on Susan personally. I told Susan that I am sending off Kylie because I wanted to spend some quality time with her at home. She said that she was very happy that we would be getting to spend time together, and she was really looking forward to it and that she loved me. How easy was it for her to act as if she is still in love with me and had done nothing wrong? I was amazed by how flawless she made it look. I sent her grocery shopping so that I could prepare everything for our date night at home. She was very chirpy about it and left without any hesitation. I placed everything in place that I needed. I decorated the entire house with candles, flowers, and chocolates. It had to look like a date, or at least that is what I wanted Susan to think. I then waited for Susan to come back home. I kept tracking her car and then checked if she was massaging her lover. Of course she was. She was telling that her husband is so dumb that he has no clue about the affair and is making time for a special date together. Their conversation was making me fume with anger. I had second thoughts about not making it too bold, but after reading these messages, I felt that she deserved to get her karma. It was time for the curtain to rise and the play to start. Susan came in and looked all surprised at the arrangements that I had made. She hugged and kissed me and told me that it was all wonderful, and she loved what I did for her. I blindfolded her and took her upstairs the same way. She took her lover. I had found the place where she hid her special stuff and arranged it beautifully on the bed. I made her sit on the bed and handcuffed her to the bedpost. I removed her blindfold and she was shocked to see all that stuff of hers out in the open. I whispered in her ear that I found that it was fun to do all of this with her lover. She was speechless that I knew about everything. She was handcuffed and could not even escape. I started reading her the messages exchanged between Susan and her lover. She started panicking and telling that her Facebook had been hacked. She has no idea where and how this was possible. She kept claiming that it was not her. I looked at my notebook, which had notes of their meetings, and started asking her where she was on a particular day. She said that it was too long ago and did not remember. I asked her what she was doing a few days ago at home. She claimed that she was alone and then picked up Kylie from school. I kept her handcuffed and told her that she would be let go only when she starts speaking the truth. I must say that Susan was really stubborn and adamant that she did nothing wrong. I had no choice but to keep her handcuffed. The next day, I took her phone and texted her lover to come home as her husband, had to go away to pick up Kylie and would not be back by tomorrow. It was a great opportunity to spend more than a few hours with each other. I also made sure to add in a few heart emojis to make it look believable. He took the bait and said that he will be there soon. I messaged her lover that Susan had left the door open for him to come inside. I asked him to come to the basement where there was a special surprise waiting for him. I hid myself behind the basement door so that he wouldn't run away before I got what I wanted. Once he came inside and walked into the basement, I locked the door so that there was no way he would escape. He looked confused as he could see Susan all dressed up and waiting for him on the bed in handcuffs. I duct taped Susan's mouth so that she would not interrupt when I talked to her lover. I told him that Susan talked about it and I was fine with their affair. I told him that I would want to see the things they do so that it gives me an idea of what Susan enjoys, as it would help me up my sex game with Susan. I could tell from his face that he was not buying what I was telling him. He kept looking at Susan for probably a sign or reassurance that I was speaking the truth, and when there was no such sign from Susan, he said that he was not comfortable and wanted to leave. I told him that he had no choice but to agree to my wishes before things started getting messier for him. I told him if he does not comply with what I want them to do, then I would have no choice but to send screenshots of their conversations to his family. I also told him that there was no pressure. He could take his time and choose wisely what he wanted to do. I went and sat on a chair from across the bed and told him to follow my directions. I asked him to behave as if I was invisible and go on just like normal whenever they met. I placed my phone on a tripod stand and started recording. He tried to protest against recording him, but I was one with the upper hand, and I would be the one deciding what happens and what doesn't. I told him as long as he behaves as a good boy, this recording would be just between the three of us. All he had to do was have a good time with Susan right now in a way which satisfies me so that I never have to share this footage with someone. He removed Susan's duct tape and started kissing her. She was crying and kept saying sorry and that she would not repeat this mistake again. I told her to act natural and happy as she was getting to spend time with her lover, and if she doesn't do a good job, she would be tied to the bedpost for a really long time. For the next 20 minutes, they were being intimate and making sure that they made me happy with what I was seeing. After they were done, I asked her lover to get dressed and never show his face again. If he does try to cause any harm to me or do anything stupid, then this video would be circulated to anyone and everyone who knows him. He looked petrified at the thought of it, and quickly dressed himself and ran away. I looked at Susan and asked if she liked her husband to be a macho man, like she always wanted since she always kept complaining that I was such a sissy. She kept begging me to please stop and that she would do anything to make up for everything that she has ever done to hurt me. It had been 2 days since I had locked up Susan in the basement. I organized all the paperwork along with the evidence. I understand that it was time to break the news of divorce to her. I went to the basement the next morning, uncuffed her, and asked her to come upstairs. I had the divorce papers on the dining table already signed. I made her sit on the table and asked her to sign the papers. I told her that I had mentioned this divorce was due to her infidelity, and I would be getting Kylie's custody, and the last line says that she mutually agrees to all the terms listed in this document. I knew that if she read the document in detail, she would not agree for a mutual divorce, and that is exactly what I wanted. There was one line which mentioned that she was never to meet Kylie ever in her life, and that I know was something she would not accept. She started yelling at me that I'm acting very inhuman to separate a daughter from her mother. This was something very unacceptable, and she could not sign the papers. She said that she had been taking care of Kylie ever since she was born, and she has every right to demand for Kylie's custody. I told her that she could leave the house if she was not happy with the mutual consent of divorce and custody, and that I would see her in court. She started laughing and told me that this house was under her name, and then I was the one who should be leaving. I knew this was coming, so I threw a bunch of papers on the table which had the details of the new owner of this house listed as Kylie, and the caretaker, until she turned 18, was me. She had no idea what hit her. She did not know that I had known about the affair for far too long to have prepared all this. She kept assuming that I recently got to know about the affair, and was acting rashly without any well-thought action plan. She had no idea how liberating it was to finally expose everything I knew about her shameless actions. I asked her to pack her bags and leave before I called the cops on her. She made a disappointing face and told me that she would see me in court and make sure that she would win Kylie's custody and make me regret all that I had been doing to her in the last few days. I told her that I would take my chances with the custody as I was not hopeful about getting it, but I would still fight. Update: it has been a month since Susan left home. Kylie and I have been living alone in our house. Susan tried reaching out to Kylie a few times, but I was always around Kylie and made sure that she never got a chance to meet Kylie alone. It was hard to explain to Kylie what was happening, so I told her that Susan had something important to do, and that was the reason why she could not stay with us anymore. I had also warned her that if she ever tries to play tricks and meet Kylie behind my back, I would have no choice but to tell Kylie about her mother's truth. The divorce proceedings had started, and Susan's lawyer presented the case that I was an abusive husband, and that was the reason why she wanted a divorce. She was so scared of me that she could not demand it on her own, and had to do something that would infuriate me to do it myself. She said that she never actually cheated on me, but only acted to cheat and had to get caught because she wanted her husband to file for divorce. It was a really wonderful story that they had come up with. If I didn't have the evidence that I had in my possession, I was very sure to lose this case along with my house and my daughter. I presented the CCTV footage from the day her lover had come to meet her at home, and everything they did after that. Both Susan and her lawyer were stumped that I possessed the actual proof of them cheating in action. I also submitted my notebook, which had the details of all the dates, times, and places when they had met, and they could confirm it with their locations at that time, and conclude if it was just an act or if they were really cheating. Susan had lost the divorce case and would be receiving nothing in alimony. The next case we had was for Kylie's custody. Susan was very confident to win, so she demanded custody along with a hefty amount of child support. As the case progressed, Susan was gaining confidence that she would be the one winning it. The last evidence that I presented was the day when she was unavailable to pick up Kylie earlier than usual because she was with her lover. I had testimonies from Kylie's school confirming the same. This proved that she was an irresponsible mother and would be putting herself first before her daughter and could not be trusted. This was enough to overturn the case in my favor. Susan looked visibly unhappy with the outcome of this case. This could only mean that she would be getting nothing from me in alimony and also in child support and would have to survive on her own. I gave her a wicked smile and left. After a lot of back and forth with Susan at court, it was finally over. My emotions were all over the place. I did not know if I would ever be able to trust anyone and lead a normal life. I pretended to be happy for Kylie, but deep inside my heart was bleeding. All this drama with Susan had taken a toll on me both mentally and physically. I had lost a lot of weight and was sleep deprived. I just hope that all of this does not affect Kylie and she grows up to be a fine lady without any mental or emotional issues. As I thought that it was all over and I could breathe in peace, Susan kept sending me text messages and calling me, begging me to let her meet Kylie. She told me that there was no need to drag Kylie into all this mess, which could lead to Kylie thinking that her parents don't love her. I wasn't sure what to do about this. Should I let Susan meet Kylie? Would it be the best for Kylie, or should I just ignore Susan's request and bring Kylie away from Susan all by myself? This was something that kept eating me from inside as I was unable to make up my mind. I decided to let Susan meet Kylie as I knew that Kylie had never stayed away from Susan for this long. I hoped that seeing Susan would bring some comfort to Kylie and reassure her that her parents still cared about her. However, I also worried about the potential emotional impact it could have on Kylie if Susan's presence only caused more confusion or distress. Ultimately, I knew I had to trust my instincts and make the decision that felt right for Kylie's well-being. So I texted Susan that she could meet Kylie only because she missed her mom. I took her to a park and waited for Susan to show up. I let them talk and gave them some privacy. Kylie came up to me after 5 minutes and told me if she could go shopping with her mom. I did not have the heart to tell no to her. I spoke to Susan and told her that she gets 2 hours with Kylie, and after that I want Kylie home. She told me not to worry and left with Kylie. There was something pulling at my heart as I saw them leave. Kylie waved me by with a big smile on her face, a smile I had seen after a long time. This caused me to ease a little and I left for home. It was more than 3 hours and there was no sign of either Kylie or Susan. I called Susan, but her phone was switched off. I was getting anxious as it was more than 3 hours and Kylie was not yet home. I was worried about what Susan must have done to Kylie, so I called the cops and told them about it. After 2 hours, I got a call from the cops that they had arrested Susan, who was trying to leave the city along with Kylie. This made me lose my mind. They asked me to come and pick Kylie up. Legally, I was Kylie's guardian, and there was no way Susan could just take her and leave. I went to the station and filed a restraining order against Susan. There was no way she would be pulling such tricks again. I was relieved to know that the cops had caught Susan and prevented her from taking Kylie away. However, seeing Susan's desperate attempt to flee with Kylie made me realize the seriousness of the situation. I vowed to do everything in my power to protect Kylie and ensure that Susan would never harm her again. I knew that there was not much I could do with Susan around and could not always make sure of Kylie's safety. I decided to block Susan from all kinds of communication. I put up the house for sale and decided to move to a different city. This could be the only way that Susan would not be able to come for Kylie. I quit my job and would always be at home with Kylie. Additionally, I made sure to inform my close friends and family about the situation so they could provide support and help keep an eye out for any signs of Susan trying to contact us. I made arrangements for moving to a new city with hope that we would be able to leave all the drama with Susan past us. Susan somehow managed to get an idea about us moving and came home screaming that I was a fraud who was trying to separate a mother from her daughter. I decided that I had had enough of Susan's drama and called the cops on her, as she was violating the restraining order and trying to meet with Kylie. I made sure that Kylie does not see all this, as this would break her heart to see why mother was being treated this way. I knew that Kylie would understand all this once she grew up and would be able to understand why I had to take such drastic measures. This had been a tough ride for me ever since I got to know about Susan's affair. I had been mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted. I can now live peacefully after moving to a new place with Kylie. Kylie is loving her new school and making new friends, which has helped both of us in our healing process. Being in a supportive and nurturing environment has allowed me to regain my strength and focus on rebuilding my life after such a challenging period. Hopefully, Kylie and I would be able to get past this traumatic experience and move forward with a renewed sense of hope and happiness. It's been a journey of self-discovery and growth, and I am grateful for the opportunity to create a new beginning for both myself and Kylie. With time, I believe we will be able to heal from the pain and betrayal and build a brighter future filled with love. Here's to hoping everything will be positive going forward and Kylie and I being the perfect family together.